Welcome to My Two Cents, a community where we ask Aussie marketers 3 simple questions each month on a topic of their choice. To kick off the podcast series, we're talking about marketing budgets, how marketing budgets are set and how they're typically spent. For this topic, I'm bringing in a couple of experts to discuss the topic. I'm your host, Chris Jowsey, Fractional CMO with Nugget Digital. My co-host is Denise Rainey, fellow Fractional CMO with Rainy Day Digital. Today, we've got a very special guest, Michelle Kvello. Welcome, Michelle.
Hi, lovely to be here.
Michelle's the founder of Lantern Partners, a virtual CFO firm working for founder CEOs, startups and scale-ups. Often the health and hygiene compliance work is sorted, but the missing piece of the puzzle is partnering with someone who can really help to grow your business, and that's where Lantern Partners fit in. In 2022, Michelle launched her corporate to consulting program, a practical guide through the key building blocks in making a successful move. Named one of the top 50 women in accounting and top 50 small business leaders, she's very passionate about using her voice and her stories to support women in the industry. That's quite a good intro, Michelle. Welcome.
Who is this person?
I guess for context, Michelle, you and I worked together maybe 5 to 10 years ago at One Affinity. And I guess when I started my consulting journey about 5 years ago, you were one of the first people that I met up with. And yeah, I just remember you were very calm and you had a lot of good advice and you'd kind of been there and done that. Well, that's how I viewed it in my eyes. So it was very comforting knowing that even though I was just starting, that people like yourself had already gone through the journey. It's not as scary as you think. And for a lot of people, it's a great move.
Yeah.
So I think you've got an interesting, I guess, journey with Lantern Partners. I think, you've kind of got this unique perspective where, obviously you've got the corporate background, you've started this consulting business. You're a small business owner yourself, so you've had to evolve and market your own business. Yeah, I guess it'd be interesting just to hear how you kind of position it and understand a little bit more about your marketing journey.
Yeah, there's a few strands, I guess, that kind of come through it. And I'm so glad I came across as calm when we first spoke. Like, so often you're furiously doing kind of like the duck paddling underwater. But if you can appear calm on the surface, that's a good start. So the business, I founded the business 13 years ago now, which I like it's actually the longest job I've ever had. This is my longest employer is me. And I kind of joke it's been a lot of different things through the course of those 13 years. When I started, I was a solo consultant and, we quite often refer to ourselves as fractional CFOs now. That fractional word didn't exist back in, 2011, 2012 when I started.
Yeah.
But we've always provided our services in that fractional way that we kind of now, particularly for those of us providing those services, think of it in terms of, we're very much part of the businesses that we support rather than kind of coming at it from, arm's length or a distance. And I think that's very much how we see our ability to impact on the businesses we support. And I'm sure it's the same with you as well. We really need to kind of understand and be part of that business, even though we're not formally or traditionally employed by that business.
And do you think that's probably the main difference between like the fractional piece versus a consultant?
Yeah, so it's interesting, right? I'm sometimes the worst person to talk to about kind of titles and definitions because I don't really care what you call us, so long as our clients understand what we're providing, that's good enough for me. But of course, you need a shortcut to be able to translate and kind of cut through when you're talking more broadly. But yeah, I think that is the thing that separates a fractional, see whatever you like, to a consulting role or outsourced role, virtual role. It really is about, as it sounds, it's about providing a fraction of that traditional C-suite resource to a business. Because typically, for us at least, they're not ready for a full-time CFO. They're not even probably ready for a part-time permanent CFO because they've never had one within the business before. And most of our founders, their speciality isn't finance. And I'm sure a lot of your clients, their speciality isn't marketing. So it's very difficult to hire for that really senior role if you haven't experienced any of that senior leadership in that discipline before.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I totally agree. I guess from a marketing perspective, I've seen your kind of business evolve, and a lot of what you're doing now is, I guess taking that thought leadership approach. I regularly see you on LinkedIn. You've got a regular newsletter. Yeah, talk to us a little bit about how your kind of marketing approach has evolved.
Yeah, and it has very much evolved. And I need to shout out to my amazing kind of marketing person, Beck Chappell, who I've been working with for 3 years now. And that really has, for me, completely changed the game in terms of, how I market. I mean, before I started working with Beck, God, I really wasn't doing any of the things that you're talking about. I wasn't showing up consistently on LinkedIn. I wasn't doing a newsletter. I really wasn't doing anything consistently. Most of my work came from personal referrals. I was at the very early stages of building a team around me. But I think when I started working with Beck, I maybe had 2 consultants, other CFOs working with me, possibly 3, but it was a very small team compared to what it is now. And I'm a very big believer in, if you really want to grow and scale, you need to get those experienced practitioners in those disciplines that you're not good at. Marketing isn't my strength. It isn't my technical expertise. So in the same way as people reach out to us for that finance expertise, I needed to rely on someone for marketing expertise because I just don't know how to do it. I did originally, when I was thinking about starting to do it, I was originally reaching out or thinking about getting someone to just help me on the administrative side. But I realized quite quickly that I actually wouldn't know what to tell them to do because I didn't have that strategy underpinning anything yet. So I was introduced to Beck, and really that has, like I said, completely changed the game in terms of how I market myself, how I show up. From the looks of my LinkedIn now, you'd think I was super comfortable with all of that. But honestly, if you talk to Beck when I first started working with her, it was like pulling teeth trying to get me to do stuff. I think at the time I was very sporadically posting, and she suggested I should probably regularly post at least twice a week, and I might need to record a video or 2. And I think I almost vomited. It was not what I was comfortable with at all. And now it's a bit of a joke whenever I kind of haven't posted for a couple of days on LinkedIn, because I write all my own content, but Beck kind of posts it. And I'm like, we haven't done anything for a couple of days. Where's our content? Which is a very different experience to when she first started working with us.
Yeah, that's great. And do you think a lot of that change from where you were to where you are now, and bringing back on, is around the kind of initial strategy piece, creating some structure around what you're doing, and then obviously from a tactical perspective, having her expertise then to kind of guide you through it?
Yeah. To be honest, it's all of those things. We started very much with the strategy. If as a business owner, you've got limited resources as to where you're going to spend your time. And I wanted, particularly as, I wasn't particularly comfortable with kind of showing up. I wanted to make sure that time I spent on marketing was really potent, and I wasn't just throwing things at the wall and hoping they would stick. So that strategy piece was really, really important. And then kind of crafting, and it was kind of like, that typical cascade, right? You start with the strategy, then you kind of put the building blocks beneath that, which she kind of helps me map out. And then the accountability of actually doing it as well. And personally, I need her to do all of those pieces for me. Otherwise, I'll get distracted by something else and I'll get deep into the business and it will get deprioritized because it's not massively my comfort zone.
So, Michelle, do you feel that your deep background in finance has given you an edge in terms of marketing, specifically because so much digital marketing has really morphed into an understanding of numbers and ROI and really analyzing the value of your marketing? So do you think that your background has given you a particular edge with your marketing?
Look, I think for the marketing for my business, possibly. I think where in terms of the actual dollars I spend on marketing, it's actually quite light, apart from engaging Beck as a resource. It's really about my time. And of course, my time has an ROI, right? And so actually being able to, and I guess maybe the answer is just a straight yes, but because I do it because it's my wheelhouse, it feels very intuitive. But if I'm going to spend my time creating the content, showing up, recording the videos, doing all of those kind of things, there's got to be a good ROI on it, because otherwise I could spend that time, doing business development or working with my team or doing actual billable work. So it is always that balance of where is the most potent use of my time, because particularly if you work in a services business, and I think sometimes if you're in professional services, and I think sometimes a lot of consultants forget this, particularly early on, is your time is so valuable that you really need to decide where you're going to get best use of that time. So that's a lot of where I kind of calculate that ROI and the financial cost of what I'm doing in terms of marketing.
Michelle, finally, do you think there's specific channels or programs or efforts that are working better or worse than others for yourself?
So for me, and it's interesting, and maybe a lot of people that don't work in marketing kind of have that same epiphany. But when Beck was saying, we really need to do emails and kind of these consistent newsletters are really important, I was like, really, email? But actually, it has been really, really useful. And I get people replying to my newsletters, which I didn't expect I would see so much of, but it's been a really important part of keeping the conversation going with the people in the Lantern Partners network. And what we find is sometimes we'll be talking to a prospective new client. It won't be the right time for them, but they'll stay on our mailing list. And so we are continuing to have a conversation with them. And they sometimes come back after 6 months, a year, because we've been constantly kind of in their ear over that time. So when we first spoke to them, no, the time might not have been right, but we've continued to have the conversation. So that's a really important part of what we do. And then I'd say for me personally, for Lantern Partners, LinkedIn's a really key part of that strategy as well. We don't spend, we do have an Instagram profile, but that's nowhere near as impactful as LinkedIn is for us from a social media perspective. And that key question of where is your audience, where are your clients hanging out, where's the rest of your professional network, it's all on LinkedIn.
Do you create an annual marketing plan for yourself?
The marketing plan with Beck is part of an overall kind of annual planning process that I do. So, I do an annual strategy plan that cascades down to financials. The strategic plan then feeds into the annual plan that I do with Beck. We also have, it's about kind of like, Beck and I are quite chatty, so I reckon probably about an hour and a half each quarter to set the quarter, and then we kind of touch base every month. So it's pretty structured how we do it now. Things change during the year, obviously. So, we'll do the high level plan at the beginning of the year and kind of the main pillars and kind of the main things we want to focus on, but which sort of sets the framework. But then there's a fair amount of change that happens within that on a quarterly basis, and to a slightly lesser extent, a monthly basis as well.
So we asked 3 simple questions to Aussie marketers this month. So we had 102 responses. And the first question was really trying to understand how the marketing budget is set. And the overwhelming response was around a fixed percentage of revenue as being the predominant way that businesses kind of set their marketing budget. Yeah, I guess from a CFO perspective, Michelle, is that a common approach that you see it?
Look, it's a good start. It's obviously a very simplistic way to approach it, but you're always trying to strike that balance between simplicity and real kind of strategic value and effectiveness, because say you set your budget at 5% of revenue or 10% of revenue, whatever percentage you're choosing. Well, if you're going to spend that money on nonsense, it's still kind of a complete waste of money. So going back to that question of kind of potency and ROI, it's a good start, but what are you actually going to be spending your money on? And are you getting value from it? What is that spend going to drive? And what are the non-financial investments in your marketing that you are also going to need to take account of? So we were talking before about kind of time within professional services particularly, but even if you think about, there's a bit of a thing on LinkedIn at the moment about CEOs of the big banks and investment firms and things like that doing kind of talking kind of videos to camera to post onto LinkedIn. I mean, honestly, that must be some of the most expensive advertising in the world when you think about their hourly rate and how many times they had to walk down the corridor and re-record that, because not their comfort zone either. So it all of those things you have to take into account. So the percentage of revenue, great place to start, but it can be a bit of a kind of lazy way to continue, if that makes sense.
I think that's a really important point, because many marketers, I don't think, necessarily align their own time commitments with their marketing budget expenditure. So it's one thing to say, channel X, Y, and Z is really important and I'm going to allocate this amount of budget to it. But if you're not allocating your own thinking and working time to those channels, then you're not maximizing the effectiveness of that spend.
The other thing that, and I'd love to hear your thoughts, because I don't know if this is a typical marketing approach, but the way that we think about both the time and the cost for our marketing efforts is that we kind of allocate 70% to things that we know have worked really well in the past, and then 20% to stuff that we tried kind of last year, seem to have a few good signs, so let's just keep trying it. And then 10% just for new stuff to play with and to explore to see if it works. And that kind of allocation of, I guess time and energy as well as money is worked quite well for us, because you don't want to keep on doing the same. So you need to have a little bit of a kind of experimental or kind of risky portion of the budget, but you don't want to over-index on it. So yeah, that's the other way that we've approached it as well.
So not necessarily assuming that what you did last year, you'll do next year, but still dedicating a majority of your budget to what you know has worked, but allowing yourself the space to be creative and try new things that may work or may not work. And as long as you have the discipline to follow through and analyze that ROI, then that's, a great way to grow.
Yeah, that's always the tricky thing, isn't it? It's the discipline bit.
I think it's the discipline bit. And it's also a lot of marketers too are very focused on doing what they've always done. And if you don't have a really good understanding of what's working, you're very reluctant to let go of channels where you feel that you need to be active or that you think that your competitors are active. So you continue to dedicate time and money to something that may or may not be working. It's almost like a fear of missing out. It's just, that's what people do. That's what we've always done, reluctant to change those things. And, to designate a certain percentage of a budget for creativity and experimentation.
Yeah.
Yeah, the second question we asked was around how your marketing budget's allocated. And I think you've touched on a couple of these channels. I think most of our audience are kind of the small business kind of solo marketer type audience. So I think these channels also reflect those. So the top 3 channels that came up in the survey as far as our marketing budget, and we'll put kind of resource and time, I think, into that as well.
Yeah.
Email as the most popular, followed by content marketing and paid social. So email, not surprising. I think it's the most cost effective, but probably similar to the response that you gave. I think for a lot of people, they probably think, email is quite for old and it's for fuddy-duddies or whatever. But it doesn't matter what business you're in, whether you're services or transactional or SaaS. There's a place for email, and so it's not surprising that it still comes up as kind of the primary channel. And then some form of content marketing similar to your approach, I think for a lot of smaller businesses, it's what they feel most comfortable with. There's no point kind of shoehorning them down a path of written content if, they're really not comfortable in writing content. And you may find some founders and people that are more comfortable in front of camera.
Yeah.
But I guess the main point is kind of some channel for you to be able to kind of get your point and position across, as well as, whether it's kind of entertaining or educational, and then, whichever kind of channel then best suits. And then I think the third piece around paid social, I think we're kind of seeing this across both consumer and business. I'm surprised that paid search wasn't ahead of paid social, but I guess, for most businesses, particularly if you're targeting a local area, there's so much value, I think, in certain platforms, whether it's Meta for local businesses to at least to be able to put a small amount of spend across some paid social activity.
Yeah, that's been a little bit of our experimenting this year. Hadn't spent any money on paid social before this year, so kind of just dipping our toe in the water. That's kind of part of our 10%. It's interesting around kind of the paid search. It really depends on what your business is. I mean, for our business, because the relationship is such a trusted one, and even now, and the business has been running for such a long time, the majority of our business comes through referrals. I mean, they're more kind of second and third degree referrals than first now. But I've never believed that someone's going to engage us through a search, paid or otherwise. So it's not something that makes sense for our business. And I think that's the thing, going back to that, how much money should I spend on marketing? Well, even if I only allocated 0.5% of my revenue to paid search, it'd still be a waste of money, because that's not how I get my clients. And so it's kind of just keeping on going back to that point of, do you really understand your client and how they engage with you, and allocate your budget accordingly?
I think that's so true for so many smaller companies as well, in that most of their search is brand search. And if you've done even a rudimentary job on SEO, you're going to be found for that brand search, and there's no necessity for you to pay for that search. And it's better to use paid social to amplify your messaging for people who already know about you.
And I think that's where the value is in actually working with inexperienced marketer and experienced marketing strategist, right? Is that you don't necessarily know this stuff as a small business owner. I mean, why would you? I don't expect our clients to have a really deep understanding of finance. It's not their world for most of them. So as a business owner, you need to work out when you need that kind of key, deep subject matter expertise. And I think that's absolutely a great example of that.
Finally, the last question was really just trying to understand how much businesses are spending on marketing. I think this is probably more reflective of the type of business, but most of the businesses that responded are kind of spending less than $1,000 annually on marketing. It just says really they're not spending, or in their minds, they're not really spending hard dollars on marketing, but probably, a similar approach where they're probably investing time, energy, and resource. For most of the businesses that you work with, do you have any recommendations around how they should be spending their money, particularly if they've only got under $10,000 a year annually to spend it?
Yeah, and I guess I'm going to sound a little bit like a broken record on this. For me, it's about making sure your dollars are being spent as effectively as possible, paying for the expertise before you start paying hard dollars or really investing lots of your time anywhere else. Just make sure you've got your strategy right, and make sure you're not, doing things just because, your mate in your network said that you had to put all your money into TikTok or whatever it is, right? Is it right for your business? And I think that's a much more crucial part of the conversation than the actual dollar value, because to our point earlier, the business owners that are spending less than $1,000 on marketing, I'm sure they're only counting hard costs. I'm sure they're not counting kind of time and resources. So, when you're going to talk about how much money you're spending on marketing, you also need to be costing out your time and your team's time on that.
All right. So, Michelle, we put it out to the marketing community. What would you want to ask a CFO? And so we had a couple of questions. I think a fun one to start. If you're a head of marketing or a CMO, how would you rank the leadership team, or if you were going to stack rank them from kind of easiest or most enjoyable to work with to the most challenging, where would marketers fit in?
Oh my goodness. I don't think I dare say anything else apart from obviously you want to hang out with the CMOs. But in all seriousness, right, we do quarterly offsites for the team. We're primarily a remote team, so getting together in person enough is really important. And Beck usually joins us for those offsites, and it's always so much more fun when she's there, because she always brings so much energy, and she's a great person to have as part of the dynamic. So yeah, I'm also kind of aware of my audience. Definitely the CMOs, but second would definitely be the CFOs. Surely all your CMOs want to hang out with the CFOs. That's how you get budget, right?
That's right. It is a funny question though, because I think there are a lot of marketers who have this kind of fear of the CFO sometimes. Like, I'm asking for budget. I'm constantly nagging them for money. And they've kind of got this fear, like they don't like them, like they take it personally. But you tell me, I don't know if that's always the case.
Oh, look, I think the reality is that there isn't any department that thinks they've got enough budget. So it's not just the marketing budget, the marketing folk that are asking us for budget, it's everybody. Right. And so, I certainly don't think that that's, what marketers need to be worried about, because it's not just you asking for budget, it's everybody. So yeah, I mean, look, in all seriousness though, and particularly, as you get more senior within any kind of business structure, it's all about kind of the relationships and also how you influence, right? Don't go and ask your CFO just for more money, explain why, all of that kind of, I guess, standard business stuff. It's about how you tell your stories internally as well as externally. Like, sure, you want an extra 20% budget. Why? What's it going to do? So yeah, and just being able to tell that story effectively, that's how you get your budgets.
Just leading on from that, Michelle, I think it one of the misconceptions I think of CFOs is that they don't understand brand, or they don't understand the unmeasurable aspects of marketing. Like the CFO has to always want an immediate ROI, or at least some kind of measurable return. Do you believe that every dollar needs to generate a measurable return?
Yes and no, right? Because that's the question I ask about every single dollar that's spent within a business. Like, why are we spending it? Could this dollar be better spent somewhere else? But I think that, and look, I fully acknowledge this is something that, CFOs or financial controllers can sometimes be too prescriptive about. It's not always possible to, understand the absolute value of every single dollar down to a really quantitative perspective. And that's why, we divide up our marketing budget into that 70-20-10. There is risk within business. There always is. And I probably say this from the perspective of not only being a CFO, but also being a business owner and a founder. You have to take an element of risk. But it's calculated risk, and it's risk within a framework, and it's a proportion of risk compared to the things that you do, which you have a better sense are definitely going to work. So yes, I want all of my dollars to show ROI, But am I going to understand that ROI immediately? Possibly not, but I have to get the balance right.
That's also a particularly pertinent question in times when, like in times of economic downturn, when there's so much pressure, I think often from finance to reduce marketing expenditure. What's, your kind of guidance to clients about how to manage a budget in those tough kind of economic conditions?
Look, I'm probably going to give a not very CFO-y response, again, because I come at it from the perspective of a business owner as well. When it's that whole, when everybody's going right, go left, a downturn and shrinking marketing budgets can be a great time to spend a bit more on marketing and to just take a little bit more risk. Because again, going back to ROI, and, if you are spending money on SEM, sometimes those costs are going to be coming down if everybody's stopping spending money, right? It can be a great time to get more bang for your buck, wherever you're thinking of putting those actual hard dollars, as well as your time and resources. Because, if people's time is very much caught up with fighting fires, they don't have so much time to show up online, for example. If, everybody else is cutting marketing budgets, well, you might get a better deal with your agency and kind of be able to renegotiate terms and things like that. So, yes, we want our dollars to work harder, but it doesn't mean we stop spending anything or stop investing in anything. So that would probably be my take on it.
It's great advice, and I think
Great.
It once again exemplifies the need to understand your ROI and to be able to make a case and to go to finance and justify your marketing plan and how you want to spend.
Just before we wrap up, Michelle, I just wanted to, if there was any other kind of parting advice you'd want to give to marketers, particularly as we're kind of going into 2025, interested to hear your kind of perspective, particularly if businesses are thinking about their next round of planning. We're a little bit away from the kind of the annual budget cycle in Australia, but any kind of parting advice?
Look, I think that, and this isn't just for marketers, but it obviously applies to marketers as well, is the thing that we spend a lot of time with our clients talking about when it comes to those planning cycles is making sure you've got the cascade right. Because the thing that I hate and we're always working with our clients to avoid is waste. So again, with each dollar that you're spending within the business, where's the most potent place to spend that? And if you've got lots of siloed little budgets, the chance of that waste increases. So, with any of the planning cycles and, are we really I don't think any business, particularly small businesses, are at a formal annual budgeting or planning process. And that's it. You set and forget at the beginning of the year. I don't think that that's been a reality for quite a long time now. But just make sure that all of your plans and where you're allocating your dollars, including your marketing dollars, cascade down from the goals and strategies of the overall business. And again, if you're a marketer and you're going to pitch a case for more money, or even reality at the moment to keep your budget, if you can tie it really clearly to the overall objectives and goals of the business, you've got a much stronger chance of actually getting your argument across. So just keeping coming back to, what is the company trying to do and how does this actually support what they're trying to do? It becomes an overwhelmingly stronger case.
All right. I appreciate you joining the pod.
It's been great chatting.
Thanks, Michelle.
I'm slightly disturbed by the fact that it might almost have been 10 years ago since our paths crossed.
It feels like yesterday, right?
Yeah. And we look the same too.
That's right. Thanks, Michelle.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Michelle.